Creature comforts. What do we yearn for? What do we want? And what do we actually need? Those are some of the things that we will be discussing today in a poetry discussion video. Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion, which will appear in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one being the poetry discussion playlist, now cruising towards 750 videos strong, and the second playlist is the Emily Dickinson playlist, a playlist of videos dedicated to the greatest poet of all time. The poem in question today is referred to as How Soft This Prison Is, and it reads as such. How soft this prison is, how sweet these sullen bars. No despot but the king of down invented this repose. Of fate, if this is all he had. Let me start again. I apologize. How soft this prison is, how sweet these sullen bars. No despot but the king of down invented this repose. Of fate, if this is all, has he no added realm? A dungeon, but a kinsman is incarceration, home. Now, I think in order to start talking about this poem, we have to look at this phrase here, the king of down. Not the king of dawn, the king of down. What is the king of down? Well, we know what down is, being down, feeling down, the direction down. But a king of that, what does a king do? A king reigns. A king owns everything inside his land, including, well, you. And you don't get to opt out of the king's control, right? You don't get to sign a waiver away from what it is that the king does, says, or wants. That's what a king does. You were allotted a fiefdom, but you owe your labors to the king here of down, where you find yourself. And doesn't feeling down feel this way, as if there is some external force that owns you? You cannot really control yourself. You are under the supervision of the king. And when the king comes, you have to respond. You have to be there answering for everything. Now, this poem itself does not just talk about the reign, the rule of the king of down. It talks about how soft this prison is. To what is this alluding? How soft this prison is? Is this bed? Is this the couch? How soft this prison is. Being down, feeling out, being despondent. Oftentimes we will wrap ourselves in something comfortable. We will refuse the labors of the day. We will succumb to these softer supervisions, the supervisions of a smaller fiefdom, like the bed, like the couch, wherever it is that we find ourselves. You've either been or seen this in your own life, where someone is refusing the sort of trials and tribulations of the day to stay comfortable, to stay in. Now, we're going to talk about something that is a little bit nastier. This is a psychological experiment. Harry Harlow's monkey experiments, if you have heard of this. Conducted primarily in the so this is an AI recap from Google. Conducted primarily in the 1950s and 60s, explored the nature of attachment and love in infant rhesus monkeys. He challenged the prevailing psychoanalytic theory that attachment stemmed from nourishment, demonstrating instead that contact comfort was the primary factor driving attachment. Harlow's experiments involved raising infant monkeys with surrogate mothers made of wire and cloth. The monkeys overwhelmingly preferred the comforting cloth surrogate, even when the wire surrogate provided food. These studies highlighted the importance of social and emotional bonds in development and had significant ethical implications, contributing to the rise of the animal liberation movement. So, what actually happened? What was the actual finding of these experiments? You have a wire mother that does provide nourishment, and you have a cloth mother that does not. The monkeys preferred the cloth mother, the cloth surrogate, the cloth stand in to the wire stand in, even though the cloth stand in provided no nourishment, did not have food for the monkeys. Impact of isolation. Harlow also investigated the effects of social isolation on monkeys. Monkeys raised in isolation, particularly those without access to peers for play, displayed severe behavioral abnormalities. They struggled with social interaction, were often fearful or aggressive, and had difficulty forming healthy relationships. Some even became neglectful or abusive mothers themselves. So, Harlow's monkey experiments proved that we prefer comfort to nourishment. Now, this flies in the face of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs has at the base of it nourishment. But these experiments proved that that is not necessarily the case, that there is an actual biological need for comfort, a biological need for soothing touch. When we are down, why do we prefer to lay in bed rather than to attack the problems that made us feel bad in the first place? We prefer this soft environment. We prefer creature comforts. We prefer contact comforts. We convince ourselves either that nourishment isn't important or that we don't deserve it. This is, I think, sort of the crux of this poem from Emily Dickinson, observing that those things which seem important from a scientific standpoint, you would think, you would surmise, I think, that nourishment, food, would be more important than comfort, than contact comfort. This study from Harlow suggests that that is not the case, that there is, in fact, within us this biological need towards softness. The king of down here in this poem is reigning over maybe our speaker, but someone for sure. Now, this poem was in a letter to someone else, and we can only sort of surmise what was going on in Emily Dickinson's life or that other person's life. But it's clear from this poem that there is something troubling going on. Someone is despondent. How soft this prison is that we put ourselves in. Refusing the actual action of the day, refusing to fix those things which do put us in this, for many people, serial mindset. This serial mindset of not journeying out, the serial mindset of not attacking the day. You know, this is 100 years before Harlow's experiments, but it's something that Emily Dickinson would have known about anyway. Emily Dickinson, notoriously reclusive. Emily Dickinson referred to later in her life as the woman in white. She shut herself in her room and would refuse to leave, would refuse dinners, things like this. Certainly, this is not a sign of being healthy, right? To wrap yourself in contact comforts, to stay in a soft prison. But is it, in fact, part of the reclamation project? Reclaiming ourselves by having to comfort ourselves in this way? Is it healthy to go through this to get to the other side? Or do we need to actually break those confines and find our way towards the the productive parts of life. I think that is a big debate, but it is not a debate that this contact comfort is, in fact, necessary. That is all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I do on the channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. There is poetry every Monday, and as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.